Welcome, one and all, to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 160. I am your one and only host on this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, bringing you the last podcast of February 2020. And I guess the first thing I'm going to do is address the two biggest changes to the podcast, which you've currently just heard and should be seeing if you are watching this podcast on YouTube. Now, I'll address the first, and that is, yes, I have changed the introduction to the podcast. Now, the reason why I've changed the introduction to this podcast, three reasons. And the first reason being that it's simply shorter than what the original one was. Number two, it's a little bit more inclusive, this introduction, mainly because times are changing and not every single person does identify as, a boy, a girl, a lady, or a gentleman. And I think by essentially saying one and all, it's a lot more inclusive, and it doesn't, necessarily mean a specific kind of person. It just means it's more inclusive, if that makes sense. And the third reason is the fact that mentioning people of all fandoms, it doesn't really necessarily make sense in the context of what this podcast actually discusses and talks about. So, yeah, I'm going to change it to that from now on. Hopefully no one should really have an issue with that. And the second biggest change is the fact that those of you watching this podcast or listening to it on YouTube will see that there is a visual counterpoint or counterpart to the more actual file video, and it does have a nice scene that you're hopefully seeing now. Hopefully you can see it, and hopefully I haven't messed up in any sense, because I did film this during London's big snowfest, or whatever you want to call it, and I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I'm going to use these kinds of scenes from now on, just to kind of give each podcast a bit more of a in the background kind of scenic setting vibe to it. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. I would really love it if you guys let me know what you think of, shots like these and the videos kind of having this kind of visual counterpart. I'd really like to know. And yeah, I guess we can move on to how things have been for me over the last couple of weeks. So I was pretty much working most of the time during previous podcasts, and yeah, this country got hit by some serious snow. And when I mean serious snow, I don't mean that it was necessarily heavy. I'm talking more about the fact that it was constant. We had almost 4 days of consistent snow, which didn't necessarily prove an issue for this country like it usually does, because usually when England is hit by snow, the country shuts down. But given that the country was pretty much shut down anyway, nothing really changed. It was just, oh, look at the snow. If anything, it hopefully kept more people inside, because it was really, really cold. At points, it was like -0, -1, -3 at some points. I believe at one point, one day, it was like -7 at some point. One of the coldest recorded, ever in history. So that was a thing. And I was out during most of it, so unfortunately, a lot of my skin is pretty dry and it's kind of starting to peel off. But that's what happens in cold weather, unfortunately. But other than that, the main thing I've been doing is I've been finally playing Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, complete edition. And I've pretty much almost done everything in said game. I've beaten it with pretty much every character, and I've unlocked almost every single trophy that is to be unlocked. It's just the online ones. And those can be a bit of an issue because the online isn't really great. It's very laggy and it tends to just glitch out and you just won't get a game. And I find it very annoying that they put trophies specifically connected to online. I really wish they would have made them more, or at least made them so that you can achieve them via co-op or having a second controller. I'm not a fan of online trophies, and I will praise any game that doesn't put online trophies when it has online in it. So that was a bit annoying, but hey, I'm really enjoying the game. It's really fun. It's taken me back to, I guess, my childhood to some extent, and yeah, it just really cementified the fact that how much I love this game and how good the game is, despite having played it, like 9 times now already, and I'm probably going to technically play it a couple more times until I get that platinum trophy, which hopefully won't take too long. But other than that, I guess we can talk about the last fortnight, and we mainly have a few things to talk about in this podcast, period. This is a very short episode, as you probably can tell by the, length of it, but really wasn't a lot going on, really wasn't a lot that I wanted to talk about, to be honest, and even those things, I don't have that much to really say, so yeah, I don't really feel like wasting people's times. If it's going to be a short podcast, it's going to be a short podcast, I'm afraid. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the fact that Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, is coming to more consoles, as well as Crash's 25th anniversary, which is being celebrated this year. Finally, more people can play Crash 4 on like the Switch, the PlayStation 5, and the Series X, which is going to be releasing on the 12th of March 2020, with PC getting a release later on. Interesting, that it's getting delayed. I don't know why. Which is interesting because I was beginning to think that Activision was like scared of PC, because Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled isn't, and at this point won't be on PC. And yeah, it does take Activision a long time to put some of these, not necessarily AAA games or niche games, but games like Crash and Spyro take forever to get on the PC. Really don't know what's going on there. Maybe they're designed or developed in a way that it requires more work to actually get them on PC. I don't know. Maybe it's a matter of upscaling the games to fit, PC specs. I'm not really sure. I'd have to ask someone about that. But it's good news that everyone it's good news for everyone. And I can't wait to see how much more beautiful like Crash 4 is going to look on like PC and PlayStation 5, for example, because the game is pretty enough as it is. But yeah, hopefully they really go in and tweak it. I mean, I've already seen screenshots of what it looks like on the Switch, and what they've done is, obviously, because the Switch isn't obviously as powerful as a PC or necessarily a PlayStation 5 as of right now, they've essentially added more, I believe, a sort of like cel-shaded look to the game to kind of give it a unique style and to kind of make it look good in that sense. Not that it looks bad, but it's an interesting approach and a clever way to actually make your game work on all platforms for the most part. So that's pretty unique. So I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, if you do have it on, I believe if you do have it on PS4, if you bought it digitally, you can upgrade to your PlayStation 5 and Series X version, which is nice as well. But this brings me to the other thing that is actually pretty interesting about it, because this is great news for everyone, because they get to play a really good game. And I know I wasn't massively positive on the game when I talked about it on the end of the year podcast. That was because I didn't really like the whole replay value or how they handled that. I would recommend playing it and just playing it, don't bother completing it. It's interesting that things are going to be getting slightly more, how shall I put it? Well, actually, I'll just cut to the chase. Activision essentially has a full year of plans for Crash Bandicoot this year, and they're essentially going to be trying to get fans to engage in it as much as possible. Not necessarily what that details, but I guess we can kind of speculate real quick here, as we've seen this with Activision. They've essentially been sending influencers, YouTubers, gifts that hint at the next game. They've done this for almost every main series game. Like, for example, I know they definitely did it for Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. They sent people fuzzy dice just before Crash Bandicoot 4 came out. They sent them a puzzle which had one of the mask abilities you can use, and now they recently have sent a bunch of influencers like a little Valentine's Day card from Crash, essentially saying that on the 12th of March the ports are going to come. Although I sneakily think that on the 12th of March something else is going to get revealed, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But it is interesting, and it's a very clever way to kind of gauge interest and hype into your series and franchise, and coming from Activision no less. I'm pretty sure it's most likely Toys for Bob or Beanox who are doing this. I don't really think Activision cares that much, but it is interesting. So let's speculate as to what exactly we can expect from their year-long plan. Now, let's talk about the big one, a new Crash Bandicoot game. Do I think there's going to be a new Crash Bandicoot game? Yeah, I think there will be one, but I don't think it will be released until the end of this year, so roughly around October, November. And I think it's going to be a party game made by Beanox, who are the people who made the Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled remake, as well as helping Toys for Bob on Crash 4. Technically speaking, they've been quiet since about 2019, so it isn't unrealistic to say that they could have been working on another Crash Bandicoot game. I think it will be like Mario Party, but it will have online and it will have more of a story, which will be in reference to Crash's birthday or anniversary. So, for example, oh, we're throwing a birthday for Crash or whatever, something along those lines. And I think it's going to include a ton of playable characters from the series' history, and I think it's going to retain the new art style from Crash Bandicoot 4. That's my prediction on the main thing that I think is definitely going to happen, because we have the whole Wumpa League thing that I guess has been teased maybe twice now. There's an Easter egg which refers to a little logo, which we have no idea what that is. And also there's a little animation where you see literally the word Wumpa League in the background. So some people have been saying it's going to be a PvP game. That's still rumored. Some people saying another Crash Team Racing game. Some people saying it's going to be DLC for Crash 4, which does make sense given that that they're going to be re-releasing Crash 4 technically, but I don't think it's going to be DLC. I don't see the point in that personally. I think there'll be a ton of merch, definitely. Hopefully more collectibles like Crash's Nendoroid. He has a Nendoroid that comes out pretty soon. It looks really nice. Good Smile Company, the people who make the famous Nendoroids, they always do a pretty good job with those. So hopefully we'll see more stuff like that and more characters actually get some more love, because like it's usually just toys of Crash or Cortex and maybe like Engine and sometimes Coco. It'd be nice to see some figures or toys or more merchandise show off characters that never really get shown, like Dingo Dial. He's a main character in Crash 4, but there is like next to no merchandise of him. You know, Torna's new design, that'd be nice to see. Something along those lines. Maybe. Hopefully it isn't anything stupid like, oh, limited time only, kind of, you know, only 1,000 copies made. Hopefully it's not anything silly like that. But yeah, hopefully we'll see more love in that sense. And also we have the rumored cartoon, which I think they're going to upload onto YouTube, and it's going to be like an episode a week or a month. That's what I'm guessing. That's all up in the air because supposedly a cartoon or the cartoon was cancelled. No idea if that's true or not, so, you know, we'll see what happens. It is interesting, as I really want them to go all in and essentially go crazy, because not that many game series last this long, or even get anything like a celebration for their anniversary. I mean, there are modern day games that started on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 that have no celebration or reference to their anniversary. I mean, the Assassin's Creed series has had nothing to celebrate its existence. I mean, granted, you can pin that on Ubisoft, but still. Hopefully more series like Spyro get this kind of treatment, so I'm looking forward to that, and also just to see what's going to happen with Crash Bandicoot. I really hope that he does get treated well this year, and then it becomes a memorable year, because there are other anniversaries happening this year. Like I mentioned on the previous podcast, Resident Evil's anniversary is this year as well. You also have Tomb Raider's anniversary, which I highly doubt they're going to do anything for that. And also randomly Parappa the Rapper. I'll be very surprised if Sony does anything with Parappa the Rapper this year. But yeah, let's move on to we only got 3 trailers to talk about. Yeah, I told you it's going to be a short one. But the first one I'm going to talk about really quickly is Marvel's Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This is the trailer for, I guess, their next TV series that is going to be airing soon on Disney+. And yeah, it's certainly shot very well. It's cinematic, and the trailer is cut like a film. Whether it is basically going to, I mean, how should I put it? It's essentially a really long film turned into a TV series. Whether it's going to work is the real question, because it can't just be an action film, and it can't just be, you know, set up for the next film. It can't just be one of what everyone wants to see. And also, when you take a, I guess, established franchise or characters that are more used to being in condensed, very small segments, because both the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they're not necessarily main characters, and even in films they're in, they're not always there. For example, when you take a concept or characters that good and you stretch it out, you run the risk of, you know, really watering it down and just not making it as great as how they would be in a much smaller medium, for example. So I am very interested, and it's also the case of like not making the series boring, because although I love the chemistry between the two main characters, it's honestly not that exciting to actually watch this trailer or anything. I mean, I have no interest in the villains and I don't care who they are. So obviously this series is going to be a really hard sell for me and other people who just don't know what's going on, especially when you compare it to WandaVision and its sense of like style and direction. It's clearly something that's unique for what it's trying to be or what it's doing. When you compare that to, I don't know, whatever, you know, this is supposed to be, it does pale massively in comparison. So I have a feeling this is going to be one of those series that gets forgotten about simply because it's just not that exciting. Yeah, and like, you know, at the end of the day, who really cares? I mean, I'm sure it'll be good. Marvel tries not to let any of their films be a flop except for like Captain Marvel, but yeah, we'll see. But next trailer I want to talk about is for the, I guess, TV series or animated TV series, City of Ghosts. This is going to be a Netflix series coming out this year, and the basic premise of this is a bunch of kids who are essentially hunting for ghosts in their town, and it's really adorable. It's really cute. I love the fact that it seems as if it's actual children voicing the characters, which is nice. So obviously their speech and their pronunciation isn't quite right, but it gives the series a nice bit of authenticity because it doesn't just feel like adults playing children. And it does seem like it's going to be a little bit more of a down-to-earth, relaxed series, something more specifically for children, I think. But it has a really great and interesting art style. I'm kind of liking it's almost kind of like cubed, chibi look to the characters, yet the backgrounds themselves have an almost photorealistic look, very similar to The Amazing World of Gumball, which I really like. And it just does seem like that kind of show that, and I don't mean this in a rude way, you just put it in the background and relax, which is fine. But I'm sure it'll have like a nice kind of, you know, context to it, and it generally does look pretty nice for the most part. And I guess this brings us to our last trailer. This is another quick one as well, and that's going to be the trailer for Close Enough Season 2. This is the series created by J.D. Quintel, who was the original creator of Regular Show on Cartoon Network. So glad to see this series already has its second season coming out. The trailer doesn't really seem to show off too much of the season itself. It seems to mainly center around one episode being like, you know, going to kids' parties and then the adults throwing parties for going to so many kids' parties, which I still think is a really great concept. But I really just wanted to shout this series out. If you're looking for something to watch on HBO Max, another animated series, something that's a little bit more geared towards, I guess, adults, because we haven't really been seeing too many series that are specifically just for a slightly older and adult audience. Yes, there are great cartoons all around the board right now, which is fantastic, but, you know, next to Bob's Burgers, in terms of shows that are currently still airing, there isn't really anything that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, BoJack Horseman is finished. I guess Tuca and Birdie, that's going to be back. But yeah, yeah, I want to recommend this series. If you haven't watched it yet, please give it a watch. It definitely deserves your love and support. I think the trailer does come off as a bit obnoxious, but trust me, the series is a little bit more down to earth and a little bit more grounded in hyper reality. And yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up this podcast. It's a short one, but not every single podcast is going to be as long as you know they usually are. But I guess I'll give you the video of the episode, and I wanted to pick a video that kind of did have something to do with love to some extent. Now, I don't really care for Valentine's Day at all. I think it's just a marketing gimmick. But I guess I'll leave you with the video of the episode, which is going to be ATARASHII GAKKO with NAINAINAI. I believe I said their name correct. ATARASHII Gakki. Yeah, Gakki, yeah. It's going to be in the description. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. But yeah, this band, group, idol band. I'm not really sure what they are or what they would necessarily consider themselves, but yeah, have probably one of the funniest and strongest songs of 2021 so far. So I want to leave you this, and it does have a nice element of love in there in an interesting way. I don't want to spoil too much, but I will say, if you do like this song and you do like the band themselves, definitely look up the mini series they did, kind of going into detail about how life works in Japan, if you're interested in that. This band definitely kind of is in their own world, and I do love how expressive and just how original and neutral chaotic they are. And yeah, that's going to be the video of the episode. One last thing before I wrap this podcast up, and this is something I want to ask you guys, and I would love to get to your feedback on, is I'm going to make 2 more changes to this podcast going forward. The, I guess, third one is going to be a little bit more obvious. I'm not really going to mention it. But the 4th one is the thumbnail of the podcast. Now, I originally wanted to change the look of the thumbnails from podcast 60 onward, but I just have not had the time and haven't been able to figure out a design yet. And I just essentially wanted to ask you guys this. Do you like the thumbnails I'm currently using for the podcast? And I want to know before podcast 65, because if no one comments or whatever by podcast 65, I'm going to make the decision myself. Okay, so leave a comment, email me, raccoonplusfriends@gmail.com. You can even message me via Twitter. That's Angry Raccoon, only 1 C in the raccoon. And yeah, I would love to get your feedback on that, and even some of the other improvements that I've made on the podcast. I know they're small, but hopefully they make the difference and enrich the experience of the podcast, no matter whether you're watching or listening to it, I guess. But yeah, everything's going to be in the download link and the description for you to check out. Also, if you are new to this podcast, it'd be nice if you subscribe. That'd be really nice. It'd be nice to see the numbers go up, because I'd like to get more of an audience on this podcast, especially in the midst of me finally figuring out the kind of content I want to produce outside of the podcast. So look forward to that. But on that case, I guess I'll end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.